if you're in a situation where, um, which is, you know, a situation that a lot of us are in, where you're engaging with the mind and engaging with life to only experience happiness or only experience pleasure and not to experience suffering or not to experience difficulty, then your happiness and your wisdom and your compassion will be as limited as the degree of your avoidance of pain or avoidance of the suffering. So aspire to be in a mental state or in a way of being where there is not an aspiration to not feel pain. And in the same way, be in a mental state or take a position where there is not an aspiration to feel pleasure or to get pleasure. This is a really solid mindset to approach meditation with. As much as you think about meditation or Buddhism or life as being a vehicle for you to experience pleasure and to avoid pain, um, you're going to be like a gardener who can't stop thinking about the fruit or the profit that you're going to get from selling that fruit, or the feeling of abundance, the sense of wealth that you're going to feel by getting that fruit, selling that fruit, etc. So don't focus on feeling that way, but look at the work of being in relationship to meditation and to Buddhism as a consistent companionship with not seeking pleasurable experiences, and not seeking to avoid painful experiences um, in this moment. So it's kind of like our life, our identity is like a truck, four-wheel drive truck going down the highway, and it's rooting and tooting along, and it has a trailer attached to it. Meditation is not to, or Buddhism is not to take out a map or to open up our GPS on our phone, and now we're looking at our phone, we're looking at a map in front of the steering wheel, in front of the road that's there. Um, but it's actually decoupling the trailer from the truck and being there with what you've been towing along with you in this movement of choice, of identity, of preference, of success, of failure. And meditation is going to benefit all of us in a unique way. We all have different intentions and approaches and goals. So you'll have to deal with that. We'll all have to deal with that personally. But the meditation itself is not something to be figured out. It's not something to be solved. Um, Identity is a puzzle. Your personality, your social identity, your internal identity, your past identities, your future identities is a kind of a puzzle, right? Multiversal equation. It's very confusing, our identity, who we are internally, who we are in other people's minds, who we were in the past, who we're going to be in the future. It's very puzzling. But meditation internally, or meditation itself, is not puzzling. It's not a puzzle. Driving the car is a puzzle. Trying to get to a destination is a puzzle. Stopping the car and uncoupling that trailer that we've been bringing along with us, and then going from the car, who knows what it's going to go do? We don't know what that truck's going to do. And then going to the trailer and sitting with that and being with that is not puzzling. There's no puzzling aspect to that. Just like there's no puzzling aspect to a tree being there. And in a very deep sense, there's nothing puzzling about you being here or me being here. There's nothing puzzling about seeing. There's nothing puzzling about hearing. So meditation is as direct and as accessible as seeing, as hearing. So it's not actually something that needs to be figured out. The figuring out is more along the lines of you getting out of the truck and learning how to get out of the truck after you stop it and slow it down rather than jumping out of the truck while it's in motion. And so the meditation practice and also Buddhism gives us an opportunity to say and to be in a space of I don't know now. And the now here is it's a little bit insulting, really. It's like putting salt on the wound. And not every wound needs salt on it. But when we have this interest in enlightenment or the path or the truth, we have to understand that the truth or the path includes salt on open wounds. It includes pain, it includes pleasure, it includes anything that you can imagine and even things that you can't imagine. So meditation is not, and Buddhism is not about you knowing everything that can be imagined. And that's a real relief that we don't have to be the dream master. We don't have to be the controller. We don't have to be the ruler. We don't have to be the manager. We don't have to make choices anymore. When we have enough blessings to practice real meditation, or to be in a space where we feel naturally at ease and aware. If you're at ease and aware, what else do you need to do? Meditation, in large part, is to abide in the awareness of ease, the pleasantness of just being, that is not about complicated thoughts or identities. Now, what does a monk represent? And this is something that I have to consider quite a bit as a monk. A monk can represent Buddhahood or complete freedom, complete enlightenment, peaceful, free, wise all the time, perfectly ethical, perfectly virtuous. The image of a monk can represent that. Inasmuch as the image of a monk points back to the Buddha, who represents and is this embodiment of complete awakening, complete freedom. But what I represent as a monk is vulnerability and openness to suffering, openness to the depth of suffering. Suffering can be physical pain. Suffering can be emotional pain, like negative emotions like fear, anxiety, depression, anger. And negative thoughts, difficult thoughts. And so meditation is to be open to all of that, to be open to suffering. When you see someone, wearing the robes of the monk, they may be teaching Buddhism, they may be doing some projects, but most monks are not Buddhas, are not completely enlightened, do not have complete uh, knowledge of the mind, of their own mind. And a monk also represents the invitation for relationship. Um, which is very important. If we have the blessing to have relationships or a relationship with a monk, that's a blessing. And that means that we have blessings because that opportunity is there. It means that in past lives or in our life in general, we've done good deeds. We've done good things. We've been generous. We've been ethical. We've meditated. And it's not about this idealism of what a monk represents or this idealism of Buddhism, meaning that it's this perfect, uh, flowers and rainbows and all that. But it means that we have some degree of common sense in the mind, and we know that Buddhism is about freedom from suffering, and that we know that someone being a Buddhist monk is about Buddhism and working to be free from suffering. So the relationship that we can have with a monk or with a community, a sangha, a temple, is about that, and that's good, and that's wholesome, and that's a blessing, and that can keep us connected to the path. We need a lot of ways and means of staying connected to the path. Because as much as we are alive, we're on the path. Sometimes as a monk, I think about, this is too much. Why am I doing this to myself? Why am I dealing with this? Putting myself through this? I'm young and healthy and, I'm ready to go, ready to work, ready to do a lot of different things. So why am I putting myself in this situation to be a monk? Because this keeps me connected to the path of awakening, of transforming suffering, of dealing with suffering, of being a good person, being ethical, being mindful. And that idea of there being some cheat code or there being some out some way to get out of the responsibility of being a human being is a lie. It's not true. It's not real. You might have a temporary distraction, but we have to keep coming back to this place of responsibility. And in the way of meditation or in the way of Buddhism, it's this responsibility that's not about avoiding pain and not about getting pleasure. And it's also not about understanding. It's not about understanding. This situation and being a human being is a vulnerable, delicate, and temporary experience. And the degree to which you can understand what's going on right now, what's going on with another person, what's going on even internally, let alone externally, is very, very limited. Even if you spent your whole life nonstop trying to understand about as much as you could, you don't even know what's going on across the road from where you are right now. We live in a universe, so a lot of times our drive to understand isn't actually about understanding anything, it's just a compulsive sense, a compulsive habit of grasping. It's an addiction of feeling like we are in control. And we don't need to be in control to be here. And, it's tough, but that's the way that it is. And maybe it doesn't matter as much as you think that it does for you to be in control or for you to understand. Whatever it might be that comes up in your mind or in the environment. It's like barging into a doctor's office to get, I just had a tooth removed. I just saw a dentist and they drilled into 4 or 5 of my teeth to fill in cavities because I pretty rarely brush my teeth. And they took out one of my tooths. I had it as a memento, but I don't know where it is now. I lost it. And, imagine if you go to a doctor's office or you go to a Buddhist temple, you go to a university lounge, and you say, I'm here to understand. You hear this, you hear that. Oh, you say, it's time for me to take a position. If you want to take a position, then, go become a doctor or go sign up for some classes, right? It's this mentality of consuming. Who was it? Was it Tom Cruise or was it, not Richard Nixon, but the guy from The Shining? Who's the guy from The Shining? Anyway, as we say in Italy, that's amore. So coming back to the question that RK has asked, how to deal with lust. Well, first, yeah, Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth, you know, and you have to deal with that within yourself as much as you can by being generous, by being ethical, by cultivating, by practicing bhavana, um, practicing meditation. Looks like we might have somebody calling in. Joel, do you have a, no. Uh, because the things are appearing and disappearing all the time, you know. We think if we understand this person or this situation or this experience, that somehow we'll be empowered, or we'll be free, we'll be happy, we'll be um, independent because we understand something. But we can't understand everything, and this is concerned with everything. This is not concerned with someone in particular. This is not concerned with something in particular. This is concerned with everything. Buddhism is concerned with everything. So, dealing with lust, dealing with sexual desire and sexual thoughts and sexual feelings is really a matter of there's a boundary wall here where, really, we're showing up at a construction site. We're showing up in the midst of a big project. This isn't a YouTube video for us to watch. This isn't a cheeseburger for us to buy. This isn't a tooth to be pulled out. This is a big project. I can think back, I can remember about my life before I was a monk and I was working on kind of an assistant supervisor doing general construction work in Seattle. And we would be, putting extensions on houses, and we'd have people who are more or less experienced coming in. It's not too big, it's just the way that it is, right? We're coming across this life, we're coming across this everything. And we have to accept that. We can't just pinhole it, we can't just put it into a little box, all the time. So if we show up and we show up on that construction site and we say, hey, how do we finish this? It doesn't work like that. And yeah, we can, the manager, the lead carpenter might put you on this project and then you're working on that. But that's not the answer to your question. How do we finish this? How do we resolve this? And the same way, that person might sit you down and you have a 10-hour long discussion with him, and he tells you about every aspect of how you go through this, how you do the work, how you do every single process to finish this work, to get that payday. I mean, that's what we're all here for, isn't it? We're here for the big payday. Meaning freedom, happiness, joy, helping others, whatever, however we justify it. But even that 10-hour session of explanation, that also isn't really the answer. It's just an explanation. It's just an idea. So the questions can actually be really, really powerful. The questions themselves can be really, really helpful, because when you can ask that question, how do I deal with sexual desire? How do I deal with lust? How do I manage it? How do I take care of it? There's already a lot of answers if you can ask that question very deeply within the question, right? So, one answer is you. And you is a kind of responsibility, this awareness of your capacity to take care, to manage things, right? So, looking at that you, whatever that is, that awareness, that capacity to take care. And the manage is right there with that, that there's something that can be done about this. And also that there's kind of an issue here that you're trying to work on. There's something that's causing suffering for you. And then you've identified what is kind of going along with that issue, right? The energy that's out of control that's going along with that. So we apply the balm of awareness to whatever tensions or knots or stress or sufferings arise in this moment. And other than that, to throw some wood on the fire, we have to find a way to live a meaningful life that is not completely separate from generosity and living ethically. Living ethically means we're willing to feel pain to help. We're willing to experience suffering to help. And we have to be patient with ourselves, as we find that there's a point of change. Don't be surprised if that changes. So changing is changing all the time. And as that change is experienced, there will be some change that we deem to be positive, and there will be some change that we deem to be negative. We like this change, we don't like that change. But the change is a constant, so we actually have to develop our relationship with change in a way that's not based in anger or fear or letting non-practical, complicated thinking overly influence us. Any questions? So the answer to confusion, the real answer to confusion is detachment. And it doesn't mean that we won't be confused or experience confusion, but it means that we won't be confused by confusion. We won't be angered at anger. We won't be lustful about lust. We won't identify that confusion is ourselves, that lust is ourselves, that desire is ourselves, that your thoughts are yourself. Your thought is no more yourself than the tooth that they took out of my head an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. And where's that tooth now? I've lost myself. You can say it's a part of yourself, but really that's not how we think about it. That's not how we work with the attachment to the body. You know, if someone came along and took off our ear, even if we didn't feel pain as it was happening, you would, and they said, look, it's no big deal. This is not yourself. You wouldn't say, oh yeah, that's just a part of myself. So your thoughts are not actually you. And what is you? Well, that's planting seeds for a new community. It's time to wake up, right? There's a chance for us to live our lives in a more and more meaningful way, a more enriched way that's not about being the enlightened person. There is no enlightened person. And it's patience and openness and taking responsibility for living this life, having respect internally for the motto, for the teaching that without mud, there is no lotus. So, how can we immerse ourselves in mud? How can we go into the mud without being defiled by it? That's mindfulness and detachment. There's nothing to be afraid of. There is fear, but there's no thing in particular to be afraid of. So we can relax about fear. The same with confusion, the same about complicated thinking. Confusion is there, complicated thinking is there, paranoia is there, anger is there, but there's not actually something in particular to be afraid of or to be confused about. And that actually releases confusion. It releases our affiliation with it. It releases our tangledness in thoughts that are non-practical and unnecessary. Ajahn Sumedho, I've got to listen to some, it's been a little bit since I've listened to Ajahn Sumedho, and it's one of the teachers I recommend for anyone to listen to. But we do. We need teachers. We need community. We need relationships with monks. We need to be donors. We need to be volunteers. We need to be givers. And we have to sustain giving. We have to sustain the heart and mind and the bloodstream that is our birthright of generosity. I have to change my gauze for the open gum. Thoughts on consciousness. All right, we're going to get into that. I'm happy to tell you about consciousness when I come back from the. It's a good way to do it. My teacher also has been using mirrors recently. Thank you, Richard. So we have the question, and we have my tooth here also. It's very rotten. Very rotten on top, but the root is actually very healthy and very strong. I've been told, and I am experiencing that by looking at this tooth. And if anybody, if anybody wants this tooth, let me know. Maybe we can give it away for charity's sake. Okay, so the question on the table is what are your thoughts on what is consciousness, or what is that about, and is consciousness fundamental? Nothing is fundamental, and consciousness is nothing. Consciousness is a word or a label or a concept, and it is whatever you happen to think about it at that moment. So if we have two people in the room with me, and one person thinks that consciousness is this, and another person thinks that consciousness is that, then that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is this and that. So detach from thoughts and be mindful. And the awareness, or kind of being, will become more subtle and clear and direct. And I think that that's what consciousness is alluding to, that which is direct and here and now, and to be seen for oneself. To follow Buddhism and to practice Buddhism properly, you have to detach from a lot of thoughts that you have. And you have to find a good teacher. You have to do what that teacher tells you to do. You have to listen to them. And try to listen to them. Try to practice with them. Yeah. And see how it goes. See for yourself how your experience is. When you try to put into practice what they tell you to do. And if we're listening to Ajahn Sumedho, if we're listening to Thich Nhat Hanh, if we're listening to um, Ajahn Brahm, and there are many teachers, right? Great teachers, high teachers out there, then we'll have something worthwhile to talk about. And we'll have something worthwhile to think about. And we'll have something worthwhile to practice with. The problem is when we don't listen to these teachers, we don't listen to the wise ones, and we get involved in arguing, judging, controlling. We get involved with interpersonal ideas about each other that go against the core teachings of Buddhism and the core teachings of humanism, to be a good human, to be kind and to be patient and to be forgiving and to be open. That doesn't mean we go into battle with people we see or people we know about. It means that we make a choice about who we interact with according to our capacity to be kind with them, to practice with them, and to be willing to practice with them. You can't rely on your intellect. You can't rely on your intellect to even brush your teeth. So, how are you going to rely on your intellect to understand anything at all? Can you brush your teeth with just your intellect? No. Only thing you can do with just your intellect is think about things. And, neuroscience and consciousness and um, Buddhism isn't about thinking about things. So we have to be careful when we give too much weight to thinking about things. We have to be careful about that. As much as we know how to think about things, we should know how to not think about those things and have a relationship with not thinking about those things, which isn't that much of a task, but it is a task. And when it comes to real, you know, cultivation and development, it's not your responsibility. It's not your position to think about things. It's your responsibility to give, to donate, to serve, to volunteer, to be generous continuously, consistently, again and again. And it's your responsibility to follow the 5 precepts and put that into practice. And it's your responsibility to practice a bhavana, cultivation. It's not your position to think about things when it comes to the path, or to give your opinion about things. That's not what the path is about. That's not what Buddhism, or that's not what the Buddha taught, for you to think about things and give your opinion of things. That's more of a practical situation that you might find yourself in. But it's not cultivation, and therefore it's not the practice of Buddhism. And we live in a time where there's too much thinking about things. It's not that thinking is wrong or that thinking about things is wrong. We just want our thoughts to be meaningful and deep and profound, and not about um, surface level ideas and beliefs and opinions. Whose opinion is worthwhile? Well, the master carpenter who's taking responsibility for building the addition onto your house. That's a valuable opinion. But your opinion about Buddhism or about meditation is never going to be as important as your practice of meditation and your practice of Buddhism. There's no explanation for how this universe began or how we got into this situation. You need to go and talk with a Christian a priest if you want an answer for that. Why did I have this experience? I don't know. It's a matter of karma. It's a matter of cause and effect. We have to stop looking for an explanation. Explain this to me. That's not what we do. That's not how this world works. You don't call up a plumber and ask them to explain this to you. Cause and effect. The storm of cause and effect. Take it or leave it. Freely. And don't be convinced. The state of mind of not being convinced is wonderful. It's not aggressive and it's not about choosing something. It's not about picking and choosing things. It's more a state of being, a state of awareness. And it's okay that you have a thought, but we're easy to get into the trap or the wrong thinking, the wrong idea as spiritual practitioners, as people on this path. It's very easy for us to get into this thought of the carpenter's apprentice that learned how to hit a nail in one strike and now thinks that they're ready to, build things and have something to say on the job site. That's us. That's our humanity. Yeah, you can hit a nail on the head, but is that concerned with the truth? Or is it just concerned with hitting a nail on the head? And that is the truth as much as it is just that. But if you can't see that it's just that, then, don't give that much importance to it. Give importance to listening more. Give importance to giving more. When's the last time we called someone? When's the last time we reached out to someone and said, hey, if you need anything, let me know? When's the last time you said those words to somebody? When's the last time you studied the Dhamma? When's the last time you listened to a Dhamma talk? When's the last time you remembered about living ethically, being an ethical person? When's the last time you volunteered somewhere or made a donation or practiced meditation? But it's not about sin. It's about cultivation. We get ourselves in a really unworkable situation when we don't give, when we don't donate, when we don't volunteer, when we don't sacrifice, when we don't renounce, when we don't give up, give away. It becomes an unworkable situation in approaching spirituality, approaching spiritual life. The only time that you can't be tricked is when you give. The only time you can't be tricked by something, by someone, etc., is when you detach, when you abandon, when you renounce, when you forgive. Everything else is transactional. Everything else is interpersonal. But when you give up, when you abandon, when you detach, when you put down rather than pick up, there is a clean slate. And we also have the practice when we pick up explicitly to put down. Repentance, the revocation of that which is grasped. May I change my ways. May I not do wrong deeds. And this is important. Hak Oli Hak says, all I know is chaos, panic, and fear. And yet here we are. These two hearts beating as they are already. This moment as it is already. This seeing as it is already. This hearing as it is already. This light, this color, this bloody gauze, this tooth and gems. How is that possible? How is it possible that all you know is chaos, panic, and fear, and yet this Buddhist monk has a hand full of gems and a tooth that was taken out of his mouth an hour ago, speaking to you directly 2 hours ago, whatever, rotten tooth. How is that possible? It's not already. And that is that's a kind of enlightenment. Where did the apple tree in Montana go when the tornado came through? What's the color of the sky when your eyes are closed? Is this Bhante Warapano's tooth? Or is this just a tooth? Or is it not any idea at all? Is it not a thing? It just is what it is. So, you're not alone in those feelings, and you don't have to be afraid of those experiences. You can give them to me, and I will detach from them. I will forgive them inside of myself. And I'm here to help. That's just philosophizing, but this is just this. Right? Consciousness is just like this. The way it is just like this. It's not about philosophy. It's not about concepts. It's not about beliefs. It's not about ideas. It just is this way already. Yeah. So I wouldn't know, I don't know exactly how to explain it, which is fine. We can say that. Someone someone calls us, they say, how do you explain this? Um, I don't know. I don't know how to explain this. But Buddhism isn't proselytizing because there's nothing in Buddhism for you to be convinced about. There's no intention in Buddhism for you to develop a sense of being convinced about an idea. So the only ideas that we would be, working to convince people about in Buddhism are humanist. So the idea that generosity is good, or that being a good person is good. And this is something that um, Westerners who fixate on philosophy, or modern intellectualist people who fixate on philosophical perspectives about life, get stuck in, is this idea that there's a question of what's good and what's bad. There's not. Causing suffering to yourself is not good. Causing suffering to others is not good. And it's good to be good. It's important to be good. And it's more important to digest that within yourself than it is to think about what good is. In terms of offering retreats, because right now I'm live streaming on TikTok and Facebook and also YouTube. So I've attended way more retreats than I've offered. I've only offered or ran maybe one retreat. So I never organized retreats um, by myself or set one up to be done. But this is a kind of retreat. This is an opportunity for you to retreat from you watching YouTube videos, for you to retreat from scrolling on TikTok, for you to retreat from um, thinking, and to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And I'm offering that. There's something where there's a problem. I'll call it a problem in, and this Western, it's not just talking about white people, it's not just talking about American or European people, but it's a certain kind of mentality that's maybe outside of um, Buddhist culture and the Buddhist system that's existed up to this day, this practice system, where it's a little bit like internally, in terms of your ego, in terms of your identity, you're giving a lot of importance to being skillful at something like Buddhism. And you're not really following up with that. So there's this kind of degree of cognitive dissonance in your the kind of mental affirmations or egoic affirmations you're giving to yourself in terms of how serious and interested and also how experienced you are in this topic. And there's this dissonance between that and the importance and the seriousness that you're giving to your thoughts about that versus your actual sacrifice, commitment, involvement, engagement with that, right? Now, you'd never get away with that as a basketball player. You'd never get away with that as a doctor, right? You'd never get away with that even as a runner. You know, someone who runs, someone who's a jogger, someone who does marathon runs or a weightlifter. But as a Buddhist or a Buddhist adjacent spiritualist, a lot of people kind of get away with this um, in themselves. And it causes a lot of problems because sometimes these people take positions of authority that they only are able to have because of the general lack of experience that most people have and the lack of contact that they have, the people who are taking these positions, um, with people who have a lot more experience with them. So Buddhism is a tradition. And if we want to give a lot of importance to spirituality or Buddhist adjacent philosophy, we have to sacrifice. We have to go and join meditation retreats. We have to go and take refuge in a sangha. We have to try to meet and seek out teachers. We have to give ourselves up. We have to sacrifice our life to for a week to go on that meditation retreat. We have to sacrifice our money to go to countries or places where Buddhism is more prevalent. We have to sacrifice a lot. And it's through that sacrifice that the humbleness and the openness kind of comes up naturally. Or we create this space for us to be humble, to be open, to have an experience that's bigger than ourselves. Because you can't take on this weight and this heaviness of the responsibility to become enlightened or to know about the truth or to fully understand your own mind in isolation. Even to meditate very seriously without a community, without a teacher, without an infrastructure of support can be very damaging, can be very destabilizing, can be very confusing. There's so many stories of um, people in America in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s who met some teacher in India or had some experience on psychedelics or in meditation and then considered themselves to be like masters of the universe, these enlightened people. And they created big communities and they received all these donations and they made this complete absolute mess. And they weren't even particularly enlightened. They weren't even like moderately enlightened. And I'm grateful. I'm lucky, and I've backed myself off. It's kind of been one of my practices and this year to back myself off from being in that position too heavily. And in being in that position, before I stepped back from it more, I was already taking refuge in the Sangha and in teachers that were way more experienced than me. So I was able to avoid a lot of this insanity that goes along with, being a high school basketball star that doesn't realize that college exists, that doesn't realize that the NBA exists, you know? And this American nightmare, this modern Western nightmare, is that we all want to be the king of the castle. We all want to be the professional. We all want to be the millionaire or the billionaire. But the thing is, in a functioning community, in a functioning human society, we don't need to be the millionaire to get the benefits from the millionaire. And what we may find is that we're not even that serious about it. We're not that interested in it to get to that point of experience because we're not interested in sacrificing that much. We're not, and it's not that we can't or that we're not willing to or that we don't have the strength to do that. We're not even interested in that, you know. But because we all want to be in this ultimate position, it just creates this inability to communicate with each other that's completely unnecessary. I I can give some example. I was earlier this year. It was a really great experience for me. Um, I was in the south of Italy, and my teacher's tradition, my teacher's group, we have a monastery there. We have a temple there in the south of Italy. It's a beautiful place. So nobody was managing it or running it, and I got the good chance to go and stay there and be the head monk and the manager. And what that looked like was, I spent a lot of time in my room. I spent a lot of time meditating. I spent a lot of time doing my spiritual process. And spiritual process looks like um, getting to a point of intensity where you get stressed in meditating and fasting and working with people and then relaxing, right? And then calming down. So it's like you push and then you relax so you don't make yourself sick. And at that temple, we had Western volunteers that were living there um, and that didn't have a lot of experience with meditation or Buddhism. And, at a temple, there's a lot of things or a meditation center, there's a lot of things that need to get done. We have to clean, we have to cook, we have to, have some kind of schedule with each other. Um, and so in that situation, what I explain to people is that, this is a Buddhist temple. I'm a Buddhist monk. The guy whose picture is on the wall, that's my teacher. I know about his teachings. I've been following him for a while. And, that's the way that it is. And here's our philosophy of practice. We want to try to do good deeds. We want to try to volunteer. We want to try to help. This is what we have in Buddhism of generosity and precepts and meditation. So let's support each other to do that. And it worked just fine. Nobody was knocking on my door, saying, Bante, why aren't you cooking? Or, Bante, why aren't you cleaning the toilets? I'm monking. And that's my way of doing good deeds. That's my way of practicing Buddhism. This is my teacher's temple. I'm here. And you're here as a volunteer, and I'm here as a monk. And it doesn't need to be this superior, inferior. It's just we make use of the situation as it is, and we don't have to trick each other. We don't have to manipulate each other. And if someone is staying at the meditation center and they don't want to do good deeds, or they don't believe in Buddhism, or they don't respect, the notion of a monk, well, maybe they're at the wrong place. That's not about superiority. That's not about inferiority, right? So, that's how I think we should learn how to be in relationship with each other, having a good intention and trying to follow through and not get stuck in trying to, where are the puppet strings? The puppet strings are in you. These puppet strings of greed and anger and delusion. And we're coming together to work that out. You have something to say? Great. Maybe I have something to say too. And if I'm a monk and you're not, you just have to deal with that. Or, if I'm driving by in a car and you're at the side of the road and you have something to say, and then I say something back to you, well, I'm in a car and you're not, and you have to deal with that, and I can't deal with that for you. And we have all these kind of background notions of a monk, a temple, a car, a road, but all of that is not that complicated. It's just how do we use, the complication is trying to use that with attachment or trying to not use that with attachment. So just use it without attaching to it. Make use of it to help others, to help yourself, and to help the release of grasping. We find out what we're really interested in and who we really are by sacrificing, by generosity, by strong generosity, by strong sacrifice, by strong renunciation. By giving, by showing up, lessons that we get from a retreat or a retreating period like this. And the lessons are very important because the lessons are kind of like insights. And the insights can be very subtle at first, right? So it affects our mind in a little bit of a small way or a subtle way. And then as time goes by, as we practice more seriously, it affects our mind in a greater, more subtle way, more and more profoundly, maybe more and more noticeable. But one of these insights that we get from this period of retreat like this is that there is a real space in our mind and in our experience. There's an aspect of our mind, there's an aspect of our experience where we can be at peace without entertainment. And we can experience a kind of satisfaction or a kind of release that's not about something in particular. And this release, this is a key for how to navigate our lives moving forward. And we should begin to apply as much as we can this key towards every experience that we have. Because what we attach to is the pleasurable experience, the painful experience, the neutral experience, and we suffer because of that. And what we find out in a experience like this, even though it may not be this profound kind of cessation or enlightenment experience, maybe it is, maybe it's not. But what we can find out is that there's this um, space of awareness that it has nothing to do with being entertained or stimulated by something or someone or some thought or some place in particular. And we use this space, this beingness, this ground of not needing to be entertained, because people who are here, I mean, there's only so much entertainment you can get from something like this. I'm sure I could be much more entertaining, much more stimulating in a positive or negative way, even more stimulating in the neutral way of boredom, right? That we don't have to seek out something. We don't have to try to avoid something to be free of suffering. And this is um, very important foundation for making our life to be about not our selfishness, not our anger, not our greed, not our complicated thoughts, but we'll still be about those things in different ways because we're not a Buddha, we're not fully enlightened, so all this is going to come up. And when it comes up, we apply generosity, we apply the precepts, we apply coming back to cultivation, coming back to the way of meditation, instead of trying to figure all of this out. Because trying to figure all of this out is not the answer to the problem. You may be able to figure yourself out. You may be able to figure this out, and you should try. That's what Buddhism is about. We're trying to free this out, free this from suffering. But we cannot control the environment. We cannot control other people. So we have to learn how to stop navigating our lives from this idea of just about controlling. More about giving, more about releasing in precepts and meditation. Giving and releasing in precepts and meditation. Okay, let's practice meditation together at this time. Make sure that you're not trying to do anything right now. And you can check in with yourself. You can ask yourself, am I trying to do anything right now? And in that, there should immediately be a kind of echo of release. And allow that echo of release to naturally be throughout the whole body and mind. And that echo of release has a quality to, without effort, identify places of tension in the body. So allow kindness and relaxation to meet those places. Now, when we practice meditation, there is a sense of tension But this is a meditative tension. This is the tension of mindfulness, and this is a good tension. As much as tension can be good, this is a good tension. So embrace that and be with that fully, this kind of tension of mindfulness throughout the body and mind. And relax into that tension of mindfulness. Relax into that tension of awareness. Now, if anything stands out particularly at this time, feel that or listen to that, be with that, or just be as that is, just being, that feeling, that sound, that breathing, that tension. And relax through that. Relax the tension of mindfulness more and more. You can bring up a small sense of gratitude. What we are doing, what is being experienced, what is being heard and offered and practiced now is good. And it is wonderful to do what is good at this moment. And we can feel that sense of gratitude that we ourselves are doing that. Gratitude for this tension of mindfulness that is there to be relaxed more and more fully. Release into that tension of mindfulness, whole body and mind. We may also bring up a sense of forgiveness. Me, you, I, oh, we've done a lot of naughty things, a lot of bad things. We've hurt ourselves, we've hurt other people, we've done things that we're ashamed of. We've experienced difficult things from others. With this power of gratitude, with this safety in the tension of mindfulness, offer forgiveness. Not to someone, not to something, but really feel the gratitude of and for forgiveness and offer that out. You may even say the word aloud, forgiveness. We may say out loud, forgiveness is allowed. Widen out, open out fully, deeply, widely, completely into forgiveness is allowed. And in the allowance of forgiveness, we may feel that tension of mindfulness, whole body and mind begin to widen out a bit. And bring up a sense of gratitude as well again. Know that this is safe. Know that this is good. Feel gratitude for this, of this, through this. Breathing in. So we can open our eyes. If they're closed, we can come back to this natural, simple, forgiving moment. Feel gratitude. And feel levity as well. The levity of gratitude, the levity of forgiveness. A lot of traditions, a lot of groups may put too much emphasis on special meditation experiences, or you go to a meditation retreat for a particular period of time. This stuff doesn't really work, and the Buddha didn't teach that. What we're working for in the traditional way of Buddhism is we're getting concerned with this. We're trusting our gut, we're trusting our heart, and we're getting concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. We're getting involved as donors, as volunteers, as students. We're getting involved as practitioners in taking refuge. And I hope that you will all follow my lead in doing that, not because I'm some special person, but because, I can honestly say that getting concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, hooking up the IV of Buddhism has given me a healing, a peacefulness, and a capacity to help that I never had before. And there seems to be no, as much as I'm willing to give, as much as I'm willing to sacrifice, there seems to be no limit to how wonderful this path of healing can be. So, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. Be blessed and be well. Sadhu.